So we're on the final countdown to my next lambing group, which starts 2 weeks yesterday. But typically, for whatever reason, sometimes when I have some ewe lambs, which I do in this group, I do see lambs up to a week earlier. So my goal has been to get this barn ready in time for lambs. I'm gonna be perfectly honest, it's been a bit of a gong show here on the farm, trying to juggle the weather and cropping. We've just nicely gotten back into the fields today. We still have another farm that we'd like to see into corn. We had to totally walk away from one. We just can't get to it, and it keeps, every time it dries out, it rains again. If you remember a few weeks ago, I talked about, you know, being so well organized and always having a plan, and this year is a true testament that no matter what, you can have the best laid out plan. You can have it on your day timer, you can have it on Excel, you can be the most scheduled and organized person, but honest to God, when you're working with Mother Nature, you really don't have power or control. A huge lesson that I was kindly reminded of this spring. Saturday and Sunday, I took both days and I cleaned the barn. There was a lot of manure. I wanted to wait as long as I could so it would be nice and clean and dry for these girls. Next week, what I'm going to be doing is setting up these lambing pens. I want to show you how I set it up. I have a 4-foot panel and a 5-foot panel. 5-foot panel at the back, 4-foot on the sides. So I will show you how I set them up here. Okay, so there's these little tabs here. One is a lower weld and the other is a higher weld. So they just go right in there. And then they come with rods. You just put the rod through and bingo bongo, you're done. And then I take the shorter one. The shorter one goes on the sides, like I said, so they're just a little bit less deep than they are wide. And the last one just follows suit. So just gotta make sure the welds are the right way. This one goes here. And this one goes here. There, and there you've got two set up side by side. I will be putting that exact same configuration on this side. And the good thing about this side is I don't have to feed them special. I can feed them with a feed cart. The problem with the ones on this side, I do have to actually jump over the manger with a little shovel and feed them every day in their pen. So that part does suck, but that is kind of why I like to get them in here and out of here as soon as I can. I work my way this way as they get processed, like tagged and recorded, and I observe their mum for any udder quality issues. Then I start actually taking those lambing jugs down and then open up that back end, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the lambing group moves its way through and they all lamb. That's the configuration of how I set up my lambing pens. The other thing, I have to get my milk machine that we put in this insulated building last year. What I typically do is shop vac it all out and get any of the old milk powder out of it, which I try to usually clean it out before the lambs go. I'm gonna clean out the blender inside. I'll be cleaning out all the hoses, just making sure this whole thing works. It will get moved and set back up in this area here. And then because I have the two lambing groups on the front half of both these pens, I'll probably set the bottle baby pen up here again, just like in the last group. That worked really well. I can set up like up to 8 stations here along the edge, and yeah, it works out really good. That is another thing that I have to prepare before June 17th. The other thing we've been doing is we're pretty adamant on this close-up ration now. We learned a lot from our last group that finished lambing. If you remember, I ran short on feed last year and we had to make do with growing some cover crop. But the problem was when we harvested it, it was in October. It went in really, really wet, 75% moisture. So it was beautiful feed, but it was so wet, the females just couldn't eat enough of it to fulfill the requirement of what they needed to service all. They had a lot of lambs in them. So I had 6 go down with pregnancy toxemia. So just to be on high alert this time, we added a used supplement ration to it to really increase that energy to make sure they had exactly what they needed. I was leery because I'm so scared. My ewes are very well conditioned, so I'm always really scared they're going to get too fat and then the lambs are going to be too big because there's a lot of singles in this group. So I do worry about that, but as you can tell, like I fed them this morning, there's a lot of feed left. They were slowing up on their feed, so I'm glad we made the switch and we're feeding that added supplement just to make sure they're getting at least that energy requirement. And the ewes do seem a lot better. I thought I saw a couple that were a bit slow on their legs, but they seem to be doing pretty good. And the final, all the lambing supplies. I mean, I don't even know. I really have to go through these and make sure I have what I need. I always make sure I have enough colostrum. I usually get that by the case. I do have to make sure my bottles and nipples are disinfected and clean and ready to go. I also use a lot of lube, especially for ewe lambs that are coming on board here. First time lambers can be very tight, so lube helps with that immensely. I always have some painkiller nearby. Medicam is registered for sheep in Canada, I think probably everywhere. A beautiful thing for a poor ewe that's had a kind of a traumatic birthing process, so I always have some Medicam on hand. The last lambing group, I did have some pregnancy toxemia, so I do like to keep some Calphos handy. No wait, what is this? Calcium gluconate. I like to keep that handy. And some glycol that I can do orally. Always check with your vet, guys, because I forget the protocol and I always have to look back, but I'm not sure, maybe some Medicam too to help them feel better so they eat. I think the whole point of pregnancy toxemia is making sure they get up and get eating. Selenium, we do give every lamb an injection of selenium because our soils in Ontario are lacking selenium, so the mums don't get it in the feed. Some people feed the ewes instead of injecting the lambs. That's totally your call. Talk to your vet, talk to your feed guy, whatever. I also have a scale. It's just a fish scale. It's nothing too fancy, but I always do make sure I have a new battery. I have a tail docker. This group, I might only do the female lambs just so it stays nice and clean for when they lamb as an adult sheep. I do tag with an RFID tag. These actually are required by law. If they leave my farm, they do need this tag. It's a Canadian traceability tag. So it is married to my Gallagher system. The gun will scan these tags, and that's when I enter all the information of my new lambs on my Gallagher system. I do mark my lambs, so I usually try to keep 4 different colors of paint. It just depends whatever they give me. I've got a ton of different colors and different brands. It's just kind of whatever I have on stock or whatever they have. So here's some different brands. This one's a Marksman brand. This one's called Agriline Oviline Super, another Marksman. This one's called Pro Mark. I get this all from Brussels. I will again link Brussels website and you can check out their paint for yourself. So I do need to clean this out. I have done nothing since my last lambing. I always like to keep a few towels on hand if there is a lamb that needs assistance, needs washed off, dried off. I do like to keep some towels on hand. Because I'm terrible with gloves, I like to keep lots of soap. This is some vet soap, paper towels. I like to get this all clean before I start. You can tell I've just been like in and out so fast because I'm double dutying in the field right now, so it's a freaking mess. I also keep my little lambing. If one ever gets a broken leg, this is my broken leg fixie upper box. What I do is I use these old paint rollers. I cut them in half. I will wrap that around the leg. Actually, I'll put some vet wrap underneath and then put that over the vet wrap and then put more vet wrap over top. And it works really, really well. And this is so nice and firm that it keeps it really rigid, and that's the whole point of healing a lamb's bone. You just got to keep it from moving and keep it rigid. So there's a few little tips and tricks and all the things that I need to get ready. As you can tell, I'm not yet. So I am getting excited for the next lambing group, but to be perfectly honest, the overlapping of cropping and lambing, it's one of my triggers. I get really stressed about it. I've been trying to keep positive and staying ahead of what I need to do. Mark and I are just gonna have to try and make it work. Likely most of them will lamb in that first week, but being prepared and being organized, it'll just take the pressure off you. A lot of you guys have more than one job. Some of you are dealing with this awful spring. I know we are. I know the States has been catastrophic. Guys, I wish you all the best. You know what? Sometimes it's just out of our hands and out of our control, and we just have to make the best of a bad situation. And I am looking forward to spending some time with my girls again. I love lambing. The first day I will be really good, and by day 12 you will see me as a walking zombie. As per usual. That is how I clean up and set up for my next lambing group. Thanks for watching.